Hello, welcome back to Meraki Unboxed. My name's Simon Thompson, host of the show. It's great to have you back with us once again in this crazy world that we're living in right now. This is a work from home edition of Meraki Unboxed, as is the case, I'm sure, for many of you right now. I hope you're doing well, staying safe and maintaining your physical distancing and all of that cool stuff that we're supposed to be doing right now. We're trying to keep the lights on here with Meraki Unboxed, and we've got a very packed episode for you today, where we're going to really see how Meraki is being implemented in what is a substantial school district and how some of the challenges there are overcome with some of the technology we have to offer. Meraki Unboxed is a podcast that we run every couple of weeks. And so if you are not already a subscriber, you will find it in your favorite podcast app. So you can get subscribed there. We also put it up on YouTube. And we would love to have you on board. We want to make this as interactive as we can. And our guest today is somebody who has volunteered to join us on the show, to be part of this journey that we're on. And we'd love you to join it as well. So if you would like to share some ideas, then please reach out to us through the Meraki community. That's probably the best place to do it. And you can find that at community.meraki.com. Otherwise, you can reach me directly on Twitter. At Meraki Simon is my Twitter handle, and I'm pretty responsive on there, so I'm pretty much on Twitter all day, every day. I do some work as well, by the way. And so do please reach out, say hi, let us know what you think of the show and what you would like to see us show next time. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to get into today's episode, and we're joined by a couple of illustrious gentlemen. First of all, our guest today, Mr. John Fuller. Hi, John.
Hey, Simon, how are you?
I'm doing okay today. It's a sunny day here in California. What is it like where you are?
Well, it is currently snowing. It's been snowing for the last 2 days, and we're looking for a cold week in front of us.
Ouch. Snow is either a great thing or a bad thing, depending on your perspective. Where do you lie?
Right now, I don't think it really matters, as we're all isolated into our homes.
Right. That's a pretty good point. And where are you? Where are you, John?
So I am in Littleton, Colorado, or Jefferson County, just outside of Denver, Colorado.
Beautiful part of the country. I absolutely love it there.
It is beautiful.
All right, and we'll come right back to you in a second, John. Clint, we also have Clint Russell joining us today. Hey, Clint, how are you?
I'm doing great, Simon. Thanks for having me.
And where are you located, and what do you do? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, I'm based in Littleton, Colorado as well, actually. Just moved here a few months ago with my wife. I am the Cisco Meraki product specialist covering K-12, higher ed, and state and local government customers in the Mountain States and Southwest States areas for Cisco Meraki.
It's awesome. You're actually the second Merakian I've heard of who's moved to Colorado recently. It seems like there's a bit of a trend going on.
It's a great place to live.
I traveled through there on a motorcycle back in 2017 on some of the trails going up over the Rockies. Absolutely gorgeous up there. I miss it. I'd love to go back. All right, let's bring things back to John. John, tell us about who you are here representing today. Want to know, obviously, we mentioned a school district. Tell us all about that school district.
So I'm John Fuller, and I am a wireless network engineer for Jefferson County Public Schools. Our school district is obviously in the state of Colorado. We are a rather large school district, geographically speaking. We're about 750 square miles.
Whoa.
With about 85,000 students, and I believe around 10,000 employees.
Okay, that's big.
Yeah, it can be a little bit challenging to hold this role, but it is very, very rewarding.
I've no doubt. And you are one of the larger school districts out there. I mean, we deal with some pretty big ones. How do you rank in the overall in the US, just to get a sense?
Well, I looked that up a couple of years ago, and obviously the student populace will fluctuate, but I believe we ranked in the top 20, 30, 29 was the last time I looked that up. So yeah. I don't know how that stat stands today, but that's pretty substantial.
It's pretty substantial. And you've got a lot of school buildings as well. You're taking care of a pretty large estate that's dispersed over that 750 square miles, right?
Absolutely. We have around 160 buildings. You have to take into consideration all of our transportation facilities, all of our headquarter facilities, all of our optional schools, special schools, elementary, middle, and high schools. So we do have a lot of buildings that we, have Meraki at.
Mm-hmm. And you look after all of them? How big's the team that you're part of?
So it is me and my counterpart.
Wow.
So there's two of us that literally run the entire Meraki infrastructure, which is wireless at this point. Now, we do have wide area network engineers. We have our VoIP people. Mm-hmm. There are very many departments. We're a small team, but we're a very passionate team. So we do a great job managing such a large county with the resources that we have.
Yeah, and doesn't sound like that would be a super easy thing to do, but I'm guessing the technology that you've chosen, I mean, you must be making some choices based on sort of how much effort it takes just to keep the lights on if you've got those kind of resource levels to deal with.
Absolutely. When it comes to, I'm going to speak more so to the wireless side of things because that's what I specialize in. When it comes to choosing a product, we need to choose a product that as basically has the least amount of hands-on required to troubleshoot it or repair it if it's down. Mm-hmm. So with Meraki, we've avoided a controller-based system. Having 160 wireless controllers out there, if any of those experience any sort of catastrophic failure, power failures, major configuration issues, code upgrade went bad, that results in a lot of drive time when your county is so big. Mm-hmm. And with wireless being the number one medium that's used to connect anymore, it's become integral to the classrooms, to our facilities.
Yeah. Well, I can't even remember the last time I plugged an Ethernet jack in. It's now, in fact, you have to have 15 dongles before you can do that now anyway. So
right.
Let's do it all on Wi-Fi if we can. So you've been with Meraki for quite a long time, right? How long ago did that journey begin?
So I was actually brought on as a full-time employee after Meraki had been chosen for the school district. Mm-hmm. But my experience with Meraki started in 2013. So about 7 years now mm-hmm. that I've been working with this product.
Right. So you'd already, so it was had already been, I can't speak this morning. Let's try that again. You have always been working with Meraki basically since day one that you've been working with JeffCon, and so it had already been essentially sold to the county district at that point in time. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yes. When they brought me on as a full-time employee, I've been with the county now for about 11 years. I held for the first 4 years, I was brought on as a 6-week temp in 2009 when the market crashed. Mm-hmm. So I was swapping memory and hard drives and desktop computers. And, I just continued to apply myself around the county and move up and held quite a few different positions. From software automation, deployment technology to rebuilding network communication rooms late at night, and then moving into the wireless network role. But there is one thing, anyone that knows me knows that technology has been a part of my life since I was just a kid.
You're a passionate guy, I can tell. So you work with, so you've played around with tinkering with servers and PCs and upgrading stuff before you got into networking as well. So you've got pretty broad IT experience, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I still do some of those tasks. Even though I am a wireless network engineer, sometimes I'll build, a wireless supplicant to deploy out to machines with specific passwords. So a lot of the previous skills that I have have been useful even in this role. So it's one built on top of another, on top of another, on top of another.
Uh-huh. And what is the Meraki stack that you've got there? So you obviously mentioned wireless. Do you have anything else from the portfolio in there at the moment?
Absolutely. We are Meraki wireless across the entire district. The Meraki switching is something we're trying to move to because, the idea of the single pane of glass. We do have some Meraki cameras dispersed throughout the county.
Mm-hmm.
And then right now, with the current situation in the nation, the MX product line has just been an amazing addition to JeffCo because of its remote teleworker capabilities. We do have some of our buildings that we've installed MXs because we do not have fiber lines run to those buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So we tunnel all of their traffic in over a little DSL modem.
Okay.
So we still manage like fire control panels and door access as if it were on our network using the MX product line.
Oh, I
Those
see.
have been fantastic add-ons.
That's actually a big topic I obviously wanted to talk on, and you can't really avoid it at the moment. That is what is going on with this virus and how it's affected your work. What's the sort of local situation in Denver look like right now?
Well, the local situation in Denver is kind of hard for me to tell you from a first-person perspective because I've been in my house 27 days now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone else is, doing what they can to keep distance and prevent the spread of this virus that we're currently dealing with. But
Yeah.
the MXs have really been very helpful with this situation because overnight we were able to stand up a Meraki MX in our data center specifically dedicated to client VPN access.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is an additional tool that we have to offer remote accessibility into the data centers for file shares and other resources that people may need during this entire migration of remote learning, remote access. It's been very, very crazy.
And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about as well, is how the school district has responded. Obviously, one of the big challenges that everybody has right now, you mentioned the work from home thing. I haven't counted the number of days, but I think it's largely competing with where you're at. It's just becoming a new way of life at the moment. But one of the other big challenges, of course, is for parents and having to deal with kids being home all the time, as well as having to work from home. And the school districts have, the ability to certainly ease some of that burden and to try and keep some degree of normality for the kids. How has the school district responded from a kind of a technology perspective to try and help there?
So from a technology perspective, a lot of these students use like the Google Drive, Google Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't actually need VPN connections for that type of remote access because it's not really hosted inside of our data center. So any internet connection with their district provided device or any device that they do have is what they're currently using for, remote learning.
Mm-hmm.
I am more geared towards getting access to the people who need to talk to an internal server or our file shares or other restricted locations that are hosted within JeffCo. So we don't have a lot of the remote learning coming in through our VPN connections
Mm-hmm.
because it's all hosted out on the public web.
Well, that makes sense. But I guess that means you got to think about split tunnel. Do you do like a split tunnel VPN setup typically? I guess for the kids, it doesn't really make any difference, right? They're just using their home internet and it's just going directly to Google servers if it's the Google Classroom service.
Absolutely. But, you bring up split tunneling, and ideally what we do is we try to keep them from split tunneling so that all of their traffic is being filtered through our security appliances with, malware protection, and other services that we run on enterprise grade equipment, as opposed to, well, you can go to the internet to get the virus and then you can bring it back into our file shares without it being inspected. So we try to keep them on a full tunnel configuration. This way, we're doing our best to secure the traffic that is coming in and out of our data centers.
So the equipment, obviously the Meraki equipment's in the picture somewhere, and you mentioned the MX a couple of times. Where are they actually deployed? Who has these in your organization, in your world?
Physically, they are, so we have 2 data centers. Our site-to-site, our physical hardware-to-hardware MX deployment is redundant. Our software solution, it's kind of funny because that isn't redundant. That was literally sitting on my desk when the panic of, oh my God, we're going to need a lot more remote connections. And I looked down at my desk and I said, well, I have an MX over here that we can dedicate to client VPN. Let's try that out. So I got with my data center architect. We carved up a few subnets. We plugged it into the core, and then testing started the day before we went home. So it is something that has been evolving to add the security features and such to it. But it has been very useful in getting our IT departments moved over to that solution so that we can open up some more available connections on one of our other VPN solutions at this time.
Yeah, Simon,
go ahead, Clint.
I just wanted to add real quick. This is Clint. The fact that it went from being sitting on John's desk to deployed within several hours and increased the client VPN capacity from a few hundred knowledge workers to a few thousand in just a couple of hours really speaks to the power of how, we were able to address a problem and a need directly, for JeffCo very quickly.
100%. And so presumably that means we've got some good experience here, John, with how you can help other school districts as well, potentially. Are you guys sort of working together? I'm sure there's a network of people in a similar situation.
Yeah, as far as other school districts, I mean, I haven't heard any communication from other school districts that are, reaching out, asking any questions. So there isn't much collaboration at that junction.
Okay. I guess everybody's trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah. I mean, before this all happened, it was pretty much panic of, well, wait a minute. We're all going home. Everyone's going home, but business needs to function as normal. We're going to need to get some systems in place, and yesterday. And, Clint brings up the fact that MX was sitting on my desk. We actually got that to attempt to span traffic because Meraki generates such wonderful reports in their dashboard that we were going to span our internet traffic through an MX 450. And unfortunately, it wasn't built for that, but that is why it was sitting on my desk. And so we were able to just repurpose this appliance and go from chaos to here's a solution. I think I was chaotically texting Clint too about, hey, can this do this? Can we do this with that appliance? Because it was an unknown for us at JeffCo. Is this going to solve some of our connectivity issues? And it turns out that it absolutely did.
And this is, when you say connectivity, you're specifically referring to what is this, like SD-WAN, or are you talking about the VPNs? What exactly?
The VPNs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that we could, because we did not buy any sort of large MXs for our site-to-site hardware-based deployments where we just have card access or, the fire control panels on these, basically a dormant building or a building that's not heavily used. Those are not scaled up for high speed, high utilization thousands of clients. So that's why we just put the 450 in the data center, and we said, you know what? If we absolutely need an additional 5,000 connections, we are ready. And so it was a preparation, So it has become a tool along with all of the other solutions that some of the other departments have come up with. And so we leverage each tool differently for what their needs are.
Mm-hmm. And that's something which you sort of learn as you go along to some degree, and you're going to figure out which things are really making your life easier, which is really a goal in a situation like we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The MX product line has been very, very helpful. One of the things that we did, and I'm very thankful that we did this prior to the COVID situation, was last year we got Z3s, Meraki Z3s, for all of our service desk employees and sent them home with an additional hard phone. And so when everyone had to go home, our entire service desk was ready to accept phone calls from any phone queue at their homes. And so moving that entire group of people out of the building had already been done. And so there was a need to get some more, and we got some more of these MXs, and we still have some more Z3s on order. But anyone that needs to move home and have a hard phone at their house, we can accomplish that with the MX or Z3 product lineup. So It's helped out in that sense. It's helped out in the software client VPN sense. It's been extremely helpful during the COVID response.
It's great to hear, and I know our own support team use the same kind of approach, where they can have a physical VoIP phone that's securely connected back through VPN. So it does provide that sort of sense of business as usual, really, from a customer's perspective, whether that customer is a paying customer or just a user of the service that you're hosting for them.
Yep, absolutely.
And you mentioned group policies in our chat before we came online. So you got a pretty substantial group policy implementation. You want to talk us through some of that?
I will do my best to walk you through the group policy with only verbal cues here. It is something that we leverage very, very heavily. So we have multiple networks. So we have our internal network, which is district-owned stuff. We have a BYOD network, which is basically you can bring your own stuff and use your AD credentials to authenticate to that SSID, so it's still secure. And then we have just a guest network. So those are kind of our three SSIDs that we broadcast to the world. But really on the back end, the VLANs that we have, or subnets for each of those, I believe we have 4 in our internal, and then I think we have 13 in our BYOD, right? And then we have 1 in our guest, right? It's just the guest pool. So we use your AD credentials to trigger a radius response, which then is sent back to Meraki. Meraki says, I see that response, and you're going to get this VLAN. And it's all that happens in the dashboard. And then it puts them into the appropriate subnet that they belong in. And we found some creative ways of using group policies as well. So that's a pretty simple feature in Meraki, but you can do a lot of creative things with it. And one of the things that we've done is our network SSID default VLAN is one that does not exist on the switch and route infrastructure. So we call that the black hole. So if you don't match a policy, you go to the black hole, which is your traffic goes nowhere. You can't get an address, even if you statically assign. It just doesn't even go anywhere.
Right.
And so that is our VLAN 501, and When you hit that, we know something is either misconfigured or you're attempting to access the system and you're not authorized to do so. So we do leverage group policy a lot. We've actually just added IoT, or Internet of Things, audio video VLAN. And this way we can kind of segment everything. It's all the same SSIDs on the front end, but we're using a bunch of creative triggering with group policies to actually put you into, I think, all in all total at each site, there's like 23 different wireless subnets on the back end.
Wow. Okay. So what's your main motivator for that? You're trying to keep sort of broadcast domain size down, or is it security? What's the focus for you?
So there's a lot of reasons. So once you apply a group policy in Meraki, you can also do other unique things. So let's say we have a high school student come in with his Chromebook and he authenticates using his Active Directory credentials. What most people do not know is that we've triggered that is a 12th grader. They're going to go into the VLAN specified for seniors. They get 25 megabits of data up and down, and they have different filtering rules in Meraki. And then even when it comes to our security appliances that live in our data centers, a senior may have different access to different websites based on the subnet that he's coming from. So when we talk elementary, preschool, kindergarten, some of the younger grades, they may have a different set of rules. They may have less bandwidth or less access to YouTube, or we block Netflix, or so we can really leverage the group policy in Meraki to do some unique things for us.
It's absolutely essential, I think, as well. With a school environment, it's pretty hard to imagine any group that maybe challenges a network quite as much as school kids do. I'm sure you've got some stories there.
Oh, absolutely. One other thing I would say with the group policy is that we can also add firewall rules where we block basically host-to-host communication on the student networks. So they can't talk to each other from a digital perspective, right? They can't attack that IP address because we do not allow them to talk host-to-host. And we use that feature in Meraki, basically just firewall the rules. So they can go to the internet, they can get to these resources, but they can't talk to somebody else because that person's not defined in the firewall rule list. And it doesn't have to go all the way up the WAN chain to get that rule. It happens right at the access point.
Right, I see. So there's an awful lot to this, and it's a lot to manage, even with the Meraki dashboard. So I know that you've been looking at APIs as a potential way of helping with that, and that's a really exciting area. I think a lot of people are interested in right now. It's this development in the world of network administration, from using a bespoke management tool to something which you can integrate more at a software level. What are some of your thoughts around APIs as they apply in your own environment?
So Meraki opening up the API years ago was just absolutely phenomenal. So when we became a Meraki customer, I remember when the model was, we've got to keep it super simple. We don't want to give out too much information. So at points, I had a hard time even finding out what revision of firmware some of my access points were on, 6 years ago. I'm so glad that Meraki has really just stayed with the times, and now the API is such a powerful tool. So with us having 160 buildings, and then we have other networks for our MXs, we just have tons of basically Meraki networks in the dashboard. The ability to write a little bit of code that goes in and says, oh, you want to add an AV VLAN to all 160 networks, but it may exist at 4 or 5 different places, but you don't want to duplicate it. Okay. So you write a little bit of Python, and then you can run API commands to replicate firewall rules from one network to another, or just completely add all new firewall rules or group policies. And so it's become a valuable tool. If we only had 3 networks, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to manually do it. But once you get into the 160, 100, go 50 plus, that's a huge undertaking. And you also eliminate the repetitive possibility of human error when you script it.
And that we know that's the number one cause of network downtime, right? That's a legendary fact about network administration, I think. I definitely remember that.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, we all are. We've all got stories. You know, we all fat fingered something or cut off a part of the network that we didn't want to cut off. I'm sure that we don't want to admit those on air, but we've all got those stories.
Well, Simon, one other thing I want to add here too. Even before we had opened up the API, John and the JeffCon team has been such a great customer for a long time, but they kind of built their own tools to do things like Visual Basic scripting in web browsers to like take care of some of these automated tasks in the past. And anyway, John could tell some stories on this as well.
Oh, Clint, you're bringing me back, buddy. You're bringing me back. Yeah. Yep. So before the API existed, if you wanted to do a mass naming of your access points, add the address, tick the checkbox that says move the map marker to the map address, and then save it and go to the next access point, I came up with basically it was vector-based macro scripting that triggered off of specific images and mouse pointer locations. And so it would search for the access point by its MAC address, and it would say, I found the MAC address. Let me take the name from this spreadsheet, put the name in the name field, take the address from the spreadsheet, put that in the address field, tick the marker to move the access point from San Francisco to the address specified in that address field, and then save the changes. When you have 7,000 wireless access points, hand typing or copy pasting that is a nightmare. So before the API was opened up, that was how it was done. And I would literally just let my computer sit there for the whole day, renaming and moving access points when we did our first implementation. It is not the same anymore.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge. Well, I mean, I know that it was designed originally to try and provide a sort of graphically intuitive a way of doing things as possible. But yeah, at scale, that's definitely going to be painful. So I think one of the things with APIs, I would count myself in this as well. I never used them as part of during my time as a network admin. So I'm a little scared of this stuff. It freaks me out a little bit. I want to see direct impact through a management tool that I'm working through at the time, and I'm sure there are others who feel sort of similar to that and maybe haven't started their API journey yet. I mean, John, what would you say? What advice would you give?
Build a Meraki test network for your home, or use some of the tools that are available, but do not test your scripts on a massive infrastructure. Right. Because if it goes wrong, it's going to go wrong, and you're not going to be happy. And so literally every script that I build, I test in a test environment or on my home Meraki setup. And I go, okay, that worked. All right, I feel good. But every time before I hit, to execute this script on JeffCon's networks, I'm like, oh, please, don't mess up, right. Because it's just that anxiety you have when you're making such a massive change.
Yep, and I could completely relate to that. How did you even teach yourself the sort of Python skills, or did you have those already before you even started in this type of work?
In all honesty, it was working with one of my previous Meraki SEs. Um, I used to meet with him on a regular basis. We would, do a little bit of Python for, this idea or that idea, or how can we build this? And those are some of the basic tools that really started to show me, okay, well, if I modify this, then I can apply this API call or Python call to this part of the dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a little bit of training. I've done some online courses. Grab a book, grab a Raspberry Pi, and build something with it and learn basic Python. Once you get a little bit of that down, the APIs and the calls that you're making to and from the Meraki dashboard become a bit easier. You just become more comfortable with it.
Yeah, and I think your advice about starting small and just on your own network before you go crazy, very, very good one. Very good piece of advice.
One thing that I am absolutely looking forward to with the API, JeffCon's coming up into a wireless refresh here pretty soon, and we want to move to Wi-Fi 6. And so one of the things that we're going to do to leverage the API is typically we have a vendor go pull the old access point off, put the new access point in the ceiling, plug it in, and it's done. And then the dashboard just has MAC addresses through it, and we've got to rename the access point. We've got to place it on the map. We've got to put the address in. We've got to go through all of that heartache again. Mm-hmm. And so with the API, what we are looking forward to being able to do is use an API call that says, here's the old serial number of the access point in the ceiling currently. Here's the serial number of the new access point. Replicate the AP. And so once we have the list of serial numbers that are old and the serial numbers are new, we just basically run a script and it will copy every value from the old access point to the new access point. Obviously, values that are able to be copied. But we're looking forward to being able to leverage that and make the next rollout even easier than it was last time.
Yeah, you had a great quote around the upcoming wireless refresh conversation, didn't you?
Yes, I was talking to one of the guys that's handling, some of the scheduling and planning, and I actually jotted it down last week for this whole thing because I said to him, dude, it's Meraki. This is going to be cake.
It's a great quote. I think we have to save that one, Clint.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Wireless health. I wanted to talk to you about that because I know you listened to our last podcast where we were talking to Scott, one of the product managers on our wireless product. John, so tell us what you are exploring on that side of things and what your experience has been with that tool.
Well, first and foremost, high five to Scott for building such a wonderful tool. That was a savior for us I want to say a year ago, but then again, I've been in my house for 27 days and I'm not sure time frames. Yeah. But basically, we replaced our layer 3 switches at all of our facilities. And there were a couple of our larger schools, our high schools, and they would attempt to get a DHCP address between 9 and 10 in the morning. And at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, using wireless health, everything showed healthy, happy, 98%, 96% success rate on authentication all the way through. And then between 9:30 and 10 o'clock in the morning, we would see this massive spike, and we would see 30% DHCP DHCP lease times being distributed only 30% of them were getting through. And we found that after replacing all of the layer 3 switches at our sites, that something was misconfigured in those devices. It had nothing to do with wireless. It had nothing to do with DHCP. It had everything to do with the route that it was taking to get to the centralized DHCP servers. And so it was an absolute, I mean, that saved us a lot of time. And we were able to go, well, it's definitely something happening at this time. Packet capture started going. Like, we were able to resolve it much, much faster than if we didn't have that access, if we didn't have that tool.
Yeah, because you would, there's a real danger that you'd end off going down a rabbit hole with a completely different issue, thinking it's that rather than what it actually is if you don't have that insight.
Oh, I think everyone in technology has chased the rabbit down the wrong hole.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, step number one, see if it's plugged in. And I'll be honest with you, I have failed at that.
Yep, and it can be hours if you're not careful. I think it's hard.
The Ethernet cable is not clicked in. Oh, well, man, I've been running packet captures for 2 hours, wondering what's going on here.
Yeah, yep. And you're getting packet loss, and maybe you just got a kink in your cable that's not quite right. There's just so many variables. But yeah, the physical layer checks are so important in this game for sure.
Yeah. So that tool was awesome for actually being able to test. And one of the cool things is I've seen that now that lives, there's wireless health for the clients now. And that's incredible. Now I can drill down to, okay, well, this client was connected at this time, and the user reports that at 11:33 they had an issue. Well, now wireless health exists for the client. Did they not get a DHCP response? Was there a poor roam? What were they trying to access? And so it's awesome to see that even that tool go from access point level to client level now. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the clients are the ones that matter in this whole game. We're trying to make sure they have the best experience they can. And there are so many variables that can potentially impact that. Of course, the end users, unless they're super technical, they're just going to assume it's a Wi-Fi issue. It's a very, very common experience. I hear that in my own home, so I know it's very common.
Oh, absolutely. When you're the number one used medium to get to the internet, it's always your fault. And so how can you troubleshoot it very, very quickly and then give the end user that may not be technical a reason, right? Here's what happened.
Yeah.
And something they understand. If you just say, oh, well, do an NS lookup with this DNS, and oh, that's absolutely the problem, the bind isn't working, blah blah blah, they don't understand that.
Yeah, we have them focused on other things, thankfully. That's our job to make their lives easier. I one of the things which was really interesting to me when we were talking through the show before we hit the record button was this event that you run. So JeffCon, is that right? Did I get the name right?
Yes, JeffCon.
Tell us all about JeffCon, because this is a fascinating concept. I hadn't come across this before. So for one of our customers to be kind of running their own event of this nature.
Well, so I'm very passionate about JeffCon. It started 3 years ago, and it was brought to my attention. I was like, absolutely, I want to participate. I want to do that. And so what it is, as an IT professional, when I need training, or there's a conference in town, or Cisco's got a new product, or Meraki's got a new product, right? They have a little convention, and then they showcase this, or you can go and take different classes for the day. What is it? Not Cisco Live. Clint, can you correct me?
Probably Connect.
Yes, Cisco Connect. So,
Right.
We as professionals get to go to these events to advance our knowledge. Well, we're part of the education sector, so why would we not want to host an event in which the students can do the same things that we IT professionals do. And so Meraki has been basically helped me out every year do something special for high school age students that are interested in going to the technology sector as soon as they graduate or they go into college for it. But it's to give them enterprise exposure to what is available in the world. And it is an amazing event. It's an all-day thing that we host at headquarters. And I believe we have about 200 or so kids every year that come and attend this. And Meraki's been part of it every year with me.
That's a really interesting concept. So how, let's imagine the experience from the kids' perspective then. What are they sitting down and playing with?
So last year, 2019, I decided to do a wireless access point lab for students to be able to configure their own SSID, connect to it, and just kind of see what it's like to set up an enterprise-grade wireless network. Well, one of the things, there were a couple of things that I did not think through very, very well. 30 access points in one room is a really bad RF profile.
Right, good luck.
B, when you have keyword containment turned on in your corporate environment, and the instructions for every one of these students is to create a network with a name that is contained in your containment keyword list of your corporate building, it starts an all-out war of containment. So we had to power down the lab pretty quickly because Wi-Fi, it was a disassociation storm in that area of the building, and it was bad. But
that sounds like fun. And this is the sorry to interrupt you. This is the feature we have in Air Marshal, which is there to help protect against rogue SSIDs. So what you're talking about when you say containment, you're talking about a keyword that you can look out for to make sure that users can't potentially spoof a network and get and try and use that for nefarious purposes. So that sounds like great fun for kids once they get their hands on that one.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened. Basically, I had the students create a network called JeffCon. And our corporate building is set to contain anything that contains the word Jeffco, because if it's not a Meraki access point, then it's not an approved access point, and we don't want someone spoofing our network, so we contain that. That created quite a problem, but lesson learned with that one. And then so we moved to this year, and Clint was actually a part of this year, which was amazing. We decided to go with the full stack experience. Instead of just doing a wireless, we did the full stack. We did an MX for the head end or your layer 3. We had an MS for your switching. We had an MR, Meraki Wireless, where they also configured a wireless network. And then we had cameras that they got to see themselves on while they configured all of this gear in 90 minutes.
Wow.
MR, MS, MX, MV in 90 minutes.
And these are students also, who have never, many of them had never touched a network outside of maybe their home routers before. And they're configuring entire stacks of gear in that quickly. It was very cool.
Did Clint, did John put you to work as well on this?
Oh, of course. It was a lot of fun. Like I got to help teach this lab with John. It was a great experience for sure.
Very different world. Go on, John.
I always ask Clint to get in the trenches. If I've got to get muddy and dirty and I need help, I know that I can ask Clint and he'll be there. Sorry, Clint. That's just our relationship, buddy.
I'm happy about it. It's great.
Go team.
Happy to do it.
I'm just trying to imagine. I mean, it's so much easier for school kids to learn this stuff now because they'll have had experience playing around, I'm sure, with some home routers perhaps to set up Wi-Fi networks and to see it translate so easily into let's call it the world of work. I mean, very, very different to a command line era. So I'm sure that you got to get them on APIs next year, maybe, John.
That very well may be the direction that I head next year, but it's always hosted in January, so I've got a little bit of time. I've got 8 more months. But one of the coolest things about that is they got the full stack done prior to the 90-minute timer going off and them needing to go to their next session. And I got a lot of really great inquisitive questions from a couple of the students that were wanting to know about how do you carve up a subnet? What's a public IP versus a private IP? And so you can tell these kids that they are interested. And so the fact that they get this exposure to real networking equipment and real networking professionals, and they can ask those questions and we have answers for them, I really feel like we're providing a very, very valuable thing to these students. And being in the K through 12 sector that's our job.
Absolutely, try and inspire and get them excited. And you may have said this, John. What age group are we talking about here? Who are asking some of these searching questions about public and private IP addresses and subnetting and so on?
I missed just a little part of your question there, Simon. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the sort of age of the kids who are doing this, and particularly ones who are interested in asking some of those more advanced questions.
So basically, it's something that you apply through your school, and it's high school students only. Mm-hmm. We've had some, freshmen, ninth graders, but it's typically geared more towards, 11th grade and 12th grade because they're the ones that are going to be going out into the world of technology much sooner. But I have had every one of those 4 grades in my sessions. Sometimes Clint and I even hosted a Wi-Fi 6 versus 5G because those are two very, very big buzzwords. But what is the common understanding of the two? Mm-hmm. Because I would hear 5G is just, so much better than Wi-Fi. And it's like the two of them together are going to be an amazing addition to technology.
Right.
And so that's where we kind of held a Q&A with a little bit of, here's what this one does, here's what that one does. And so we were able to share that knowledge, and that session was packed.
I can believe it. I mean, it's such a popular, we've heard about it so much in the media, all the 5G and Wi-Fi thing. It's good to sprinkle some reality on all of that and see how they actually complement one another, I think. So it's really not just a one or the other thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Keeping people informed.
Totally. And that's part of, that's what education is all about, isn't it? Okay, let's start moving things towards a close. I think the last thing I wanted to ask you, John, was, obviously you've had a lot of experience with Meraki over many years now, and that's very clear from some of the stories you've walked us through. I mean, what would you want others who are listening to the podcast to know about Meraki, and so any advice you'd have for them?
Well, I mean, one of the things that there are a couple of things that really continue to just make Meraki an amazing product for me. So I come from the infancy of Meraki before Cisco even had purchased it. And so I look at the set of dashboard features that are available today versus then, and you guys did not increase my license costs. You didn't change anything. You didn't release a feature and say, well, if you want that, you're going to need to pay me extra per access point. So basically, the fact that the dashboard controls the access point, as long as the access point is capable of running the new features that the engineers are diligently working on at Meraki, then I get access to new tools as they become available. And so I don't have to do a major code upgrade. I don't have to go rip my controller out of my building and say, well, I need this controller so that I can have a la carte channel planning, or I can enable DFS. It just becomes available to me as you guys release it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, and this one has been what is just monumental to me personally and professionally, is the support that I get from Meraki. The fact that, I mean, Clint's on this call, and Clint was at JeffCon with me. I've had Alex Berger at JeffCon previously. Meraki always shows up. My engineers and I will sometimes come up with a crazy idea, the MX450. Let's span all of the internet traffic through its 10 gig interfaces to generate reports that we can present to the Board of Ed. That's kind of a crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got the equipment, and then we couldn't figure out why it wasn't doing it. And then we just dialed the phone number and got enterprise support, and they go, what can I help you with? And walk through our idea with us. Doesn't mean it's always going to work, but it means that they're always available to help you out with something you may not understand about their product line or steer you in the right direction. So the support, hands down, is got to be one of the biggest things that, from a customer perspective, like I just really, I can rely on you guys, and that is huge.
I can just imagine if you're responsible for the kind of scale that you're describing, just having the confidence there, regardless of what the vendor is, whether it's Meraki or any of the others that you partner with. I think just having confidence is absolutely essential, because you are leaned on pretty heavily. The IT organizations, it's easy to forget this because we've been hearing it for so long. We're really at the very heart of what makes pretty much any business or organization tick. So I think that's great to hear those stories, John, to hear your confidence as well shining through there. That's super awesome. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap things up. John, I want to thank you, and Clint as well. Thank you both very much for taking the time to join us on the show today. It's really been exciting to hear some of the real-world applications of our technology and how it's making a difference in what is a pretty challenging time as well for all of us. So, John, again, thank you so much for sharing what you did with us today.
You're very welcome, Simon, and thank you very much for asking me to be on the podcast. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's not super easy when you're all sort of thousands of miles apart from each other, and we've done our best today. I think that's true for sure. And we're very, very keen to have anybody who's listening, who's interested in sharing some of their stories, join us on this as well. So I mentioned at the beginning how you can reach out to us and communicate about that. The community is probably the best place to do that. But I'd love to hear from you directly as well. Let us know what you think of the show and how we can make it better and of more interest to you directly. So reach out to me at Twitter on, my Twitter handle, at Meraki Simon. So we're going to wrap up today's podcast. Once again, John and Clint, thank you so much. And we will be back again in a couple more weeks with another show. And we look forward to that very much. So we'll see you back here very soon. Bye for now.